President-elect Donald J. Trump. Yeah, I said it. We're going to talk election results with my buddy Rob Hunter this week. Welcome to the Mike Broomhead Show.
Well, I got a message. I got a song. Can I get a witness? Tell me what's going on. Show the people.
I am so excited for you to meet my buddy Rob Hunter. He's the news guy on my radio show, on the Mike Broomhead Show at KFYI. He's got some great insight. We're going to talk election results here, but we start every show off with something we call The Sweep. It's sponsored by my good friends at Zero Res Carpet and Tile Cleaning. What else could we talk about? The election night on Tuesday. How many of you were surprised? It could be a landslide for Donald Trump. What I mean by that is Michigan. While we're taping this, Michigan has not yet been called. And so if he wins Michigan and those 16 electoral votes, he will have won this election 306 to 232. He is going to lose the popular vote, probably, but he is going to be in a landslide in the Electoral College. Who thought that was possible? Well, I want you to hear a couple of things. He sits down with President Obama and talks about the transition of power. And when he was giving his victory speech, he sounded very presidential. And one of the things I thought he did that was key was talk about the people that did not vote for him. It was a moment that I think will be the tone for this transition. Watch Donald Trump.
For those who have chosen not to support me in the past, of which there were a few people, I'm reaching out to you for your guidance and your help so that we can work together and unify our great country.
There was a theme. Hillary Clinton, a few hours later, she did not speak that night. John Podesta went out and told her supporters, go home, we'll have more in the morning. And then mid-morning on Wednesday, Hillary Clinton gave a concession speech. I have never felt sorry for Hillary Clinton, ever. And I thought, what an eloquent speech. I really, in that moment, saw the human side of Hillary Clinton. It was a great speech, and she talks about the peaceful transition of power. I want you to hear the theme from Hillary Clinton.
Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead. Our constitutional democracy enshrines the peaceful transfer of power. And we don't just respect that, we cherish it.
Now, the transition of 8 years of being the President of the United States makes someone wiser. Barack Obama walked into that office a pretty brash guy, as you need to be. But Barack Obama, when he was talking about the peaceful transition of power and Donald Trump becoming the president, was very eloquent, and he even gave some credit to George W. Bush. Watch the President of the United States.
Now, it is no secret that the President-elect and I have some pretty significant differences. But remember, 8 years ago, President Bush and I had some pretty significant differences. But President Bush's team could not have been more professional or more gracious in making sure we had a smooth transition so that we could hit the ground running. And one thing you realize quickly in this job is that the presidency and the vice presidency is bigger than any of us. So I have instructed my team to follow the example that President Bush's team set 8 years ago and work as hard as we can to make sure that this is a successful transition for the president-elect. Because we are now all rooting for his success in uniting and leading the country. The peaceful transition of power is one of the hallmarks of our democracy.
This is what's great about American politics. Hard-fought, tenacious, sometimes adversarial, and in this time it was even angry at times. But now it's over, and you see everybody on the same team. Locally, Sheriff Joe Arpaio loses to Paul Penzone by 10 points, double digits. Biggest surprise was the spread there. Paul Penzone will now be the sheriff of Maricopa County. Sheriff Joe just as eloquent in his concession. Prop 205, the legalization of marijuana, goes down. It was the only legalization of marijuana proposition in the entire country that went down. The other ones passed in those states. Prop 206, the minimum wage, goes up because it passed. I think that's going to be bad for Arizona. We'll see as the future goes on. As we tape, the county recorder's office is very close. Helen Purcell is losing as we speak. but we will see how it goes and how it ends up. In a few moments, my buddy Rob Hunter joins the show. You're going to love Rob. He is a big part of my radio show. He's got some great insight politically. This is a fun interview for me. You are going to love it. So in a moment, we'll get to Rob Hunter. Before we do that, let me talk to you about my good friends at Zero Res. Zero Res, I talk about empowered water. It's the product that they use. It is their patented formula. But during the holidays, they know you're going to want to get your carpets clean. So they've expanded their staff. They're hiring technicians. They'll pay you if you want to train you. They also need call center people as well. You can look to their website, their phone number, and get your carpets cleaned this holiday season by the best in the business. It's my good friends at Zero Res Carpet and Tile Cleaning. Talking election results, and on the morning show, if you listen to the morning show on KFYI, he does the daily download starting at 5 a.m., bottom of the hour, and the most popular segment on the show, it's called Blank the News. Joining me is my buddy Rob Hunter.
Thanks, Mike. Good to be
This is
here.
weird.
I know.
This is kind of odd.
It's because we're dressed up.
No, it's just weird that I'm interviewing you. One of the things I wanted to talk about with the election results is that you and I agree on so many things, but where we're different, we're different. And I kind of like that. I like the differences in opinions that we have on some things, and I really like the take you have on a lot of them. So let's start national before we go local.
Sure.
In the national election, on election night, we did a marathon broadcast. Very first thing we said, who believes Donald Trump is going to win? The only one of us that said yes was you. I voted for him. What made you think that he was going to win?
I thought it was a couple of things. I thought he targeted the right states with his economic message. He talked to the right people in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, Wisconsin, the states he ended up winning. Well, Michigan is too close to call at the moment. And then it was the FBI investigation reopening against Hillary Clinton. That stopped all her kind of momentum that she had, all the debate momentum, all that other stuff, and Trump really capitalized on that.
He was so confident, we're going to win, we're going to win, we're going to win, and I thought, man, slow your roll with all of that. But he did everything he said. I mean, think about the enormity of what he did. Florida, North Carolina, Ohio. He flipped Pennsylvania, he flipped Wisconsin, and it looks like he's going to flip Michigan. That is an enormous accomplishment for a second term of a president. Never mind, the first time a Republican did it. That's crazy.
From a guy who's never held office before, has been a businessman, and was, let's just say, was outspoken during the campaign. And, everybody thought that was going to hurt him, but obviously in those states, the states where it mattered, it didn't hurt him at all.
So that chameleon-like, and I mean this as a compliment, the ability for him to adapt when they say to you, you've got to reel some of that in, and still be able to not be scripted and appear, and he was, I think, personable. I think that helped him a lot, but you got to be surprised that if Michigan goes his way, he wins 310. Is it 310?
Give or take, yeah.
Yeah.
What, Michigan is 16. I think he's at 290 now.
Yeah,
so,
so 306 to 232.
Yeah.
It's a blowout.
Electoral college-wise, yes, but that's the smart strategy of the campaign. I was listening to a couple of his surrogates, too, after they won. They said, we had a ground game. We just didn't tell you all about it. So we knew exactly what we were doing. We were crunching our data, and we knew we were going to be strong. That's why he went to Michigan a bunch of times at the end, because he thought he could flip it.
A lot of people were shocked at the results because of how it appeared Hillary was winning the whole time, and I had the conversation with them. The media is showing you Hillary's ground game and the brilliance of this and all of that, the expectation that she was going to win. So what we saw was what the media's picture was. How much of that played a role in people being surprised?
Well, and that was a huge part because that was all the coverage. And then that could have played a role in the lack of support for Hillary, because if everybody just assumed she was going to win, maybe they didn't show up to vote. And maybe Trump capitalized on that, too, because it was like still fight, still fight, still fight. And the whole rigged thing got people fired up to go just to try to defeat the Clinton machine.
Were you surprised at how gracious he was and presidential he looked in his victory speech?
Not necessarily, because I think that was the moment when it set in. He's like, I'm going to become the president of the United States. And, when I started this thing, and speaking in Trump's voice, 17, 18 months ago, I don't even think he thought that he was going to get this far, let alone be in that moment of walking down the stairs going, I've won this election. Now I actually have to try to bring the country together. Because, you know, you divide and conquer in the primary, you divide and conquer in the election campaign. But once it's over, it's over.
And you could see how he sets the tone with the people in attendance, because where he does the rallies and he's really got the base going during the rallies pre-election, and he said to everybody, you hear the people either yelling "lock her up" or "drain the swamp" was the chants. There was none of that from the crowd on election night. If there was any time they were going to gloat and kind of, you know, wave their finger at the world or at the Hillary supporters of the media, it could have been at election night at the victory speech. But instead, he was so gracious in his win and talked about bringing the country together. If he can maintain that, this is going to be something to see.
Well, and you go with his phrase, "Make America Great Again." So now we know the work has to be done. So now you're on the clock, essentially. Starting January 20th, you'll be on the clock, and you've laid out your groundwork and your plans. Let's see if it makes America great again. And I think the people who really believe in Trump want to see that happen, and they know that you're not going to win the next election just by showing up.
And
Trump
supporters need to know that if they think media scrutiny was on him during the election, every word he says, every decision he makes, every mistake he makes is going to be exploded upon by the media. And not just because they want to win an election in 4 years, but because they are just shocked that this guy won this election. Before we switch and talked about local things, what do you think of Hillary's concession?
I loved it. I wanted to give her a hug.
I did too.
And
I can't stand her.
Way. Yeah, exactly.
Politically.
I just wanted to go up to her and be like, wow, this was a contentious campaign. I just give you a little hug and hope you're okay.
If that was the Hillary that was running a campaign, she wins in spite of the email scandals, right?
People show up.
Right. People show up to vote for her. I think that, and then the way the president says peaceful transition of power, both of them sending the message to their supporters, don't riot, don't protest, let's have a peaceful transition and give this president a chance. Whether or not they're actually going to help him, saying that's going to happen. So I want to talk local. A lot of local races we got to talk about. Prop 205, Prop 206, Sheriff Arpaio losing his job, and some local elections here in the state of Arizona. My buddy Rob Hunter is here. We'll be back. We've had a couple of days to digest the elections that have taken place, and some things happen here in Arizona. Rob Hunter is with me. He's the news guy on our show, and Blank the News is really hysterically funny because of the thing. I don't know where you find that. So I don't want to know where you find the stuff because I like being surprised by it. Let's talk local elections or the state of Arizona. First of all, what about the election problems in Arizona? Once again, as of Thursday, when we tape this, on Thursday, 480,000 votes in Maricopa County, over 600,000 votes statewide still left to be counted.
Are we surprised at this point, Mike? I mean, it seems
I am.
Because they haven't fixed them yet.
Right.
Because it's been a steady sort of progression of problems. But what Helen Purcell, the recorder here in Maricopa County, is saying, that's just typical, nothing to worry about here.
But I wonder, is it that we've had some of these issues in the past and the spotlight hasn't been on it so we didn't notice, or is it because of what happened in the presidential preference election, we're watching everything they're doing?
Well, and I think there was a lot of mail-in ballots, too, and, you know, people's signatures, mine got lazier, and mine's now just like an R and an H instead of actually spelling out Robert Hunter.
Which is why you should go to the polls.
No way, I didn't have to wait in lines.
I know.
That's way better.
Yeah, I waited 15 minutes in line. It wasn't so bad. Yeah, it wasn't
I'd wait
bad.
15 minutes to vote.
So let's talk about some of the things that happened. Let's start with the props. 205, we differed. Now, I think you and I would agree on, in principle, freedom. But I don't think this bill provided freedom, but it went down. What do you think? We even differ on the reasons why it went down.
I think it's because I don't think Arizona's ready for that yet. It took us a while to pass medicinal use of marijuana, and I just don't think we're quite there as a state yet to say, yeah, just let people smoke some weed. It's okay.
And see, I think I disagree with you because I think most of Arizona leans libertarian on social issues. I do think that people just didn't like this law. I think it was just when they saw 20 pages and it creates a new government branch. When you think about it in the simple terms of what you're saying, you're allowed to grow it, couple of plants, you're allowed to possess this much of it.
Speaking of which, I gotta get rid of mine because it didn't pass. I'm sorry.
And when he says get rid of them, he means smoke them. Don't you think that a lot of that is if it was as simple as that, you can possess this much, it's decriminalized, I think it passes.
It's probably closer. I think because our state and our elected people who vote are a little older, I don't think they're quite, because they've been told for years, marijuana's dangerous, marijuana's dangerous. You get under 35, under 40 probably, and people are all like, What's the big deal?
Yeah, but that older demographic of voter that was around in the 60s, marijuana was the least of the issues going on.
That's true.
So now Prop 206, the minimum wage did pass, which I think this is going to be bad for us. It's not going to be the death of Arizona, but it's definitely going to hurt the entry-level high school kid looking for a part-time job, college kid looking for a part-time job. I think it's going to hurt them a lot.
Well, yeah, because you think about it, if you own a business, which you have in the past, you start people at $8 an hour, you can hire more people. Now, if you have to pay them $12, you got to either find more money or your labor costs are going to stay the same. So, all right, instead of hiring 10, you're going to hire 6.
And prices are going to go up.
Absolutely.
And in some of those places, prices aren't able to go up enough, and that's where you're going to see people not get employed.
Yeah, some of the smaller towns that we've talked about where you can probably get by on $12 an hour or $8 an hour. It's a little easier to do in the big city of Phoenix.
Yeah, exactly, and we didn't make that adjustment for rural areas.
Right.
And you can't because this is a ballot proposition. It is what it is.
And, we shouldn't set our wages based on votes, I don't think.
Joe Arpaio losing the Maricopa County Sheriff's race. How big of a surprise?
I think the margin was the surprise. The 10-point margin that Paul Penzone was able to pull off was a surprise because you think Sheriff Joe's one of our most famous politicians, not just here in Arizona, but he's one of Arizona's most famous politicians nationwide. And the fact that it was a 10-point gap just really showed how fed up we were in Maricopa County.
Almost everything else on the ballot was typically Arizona. Mm-hmm. John McCain wins by a big margin. They call that race almost immediately after the polls close.
Yep.
The margin of victory for the president was thinner, but still, I didn't think it was ever in question. And the propositions kind of were along the lines of the way the voters are in Arizona. The Arpaio thing in Maricopa County was the anomaly. Do you think it was the lawsuits and the bad publicity? Do you think it was a good campaign by Paul Penzone? Do you think people were just saying it's time for a change?
All those things. I mean, I think what Paul Penzone did and did well was not really go after Arpaio and not say that he's corrupt. He didn't call him any names.
He learned from 4 years ago.
Yeah, and he said, look, it's just time for a change. Sheriff Joe's had his run. He's been in office 24 years, and he's done a lot of good work, but it's just time. I mean, when you get to the point where you have these charges that are hanging above your head, whether they're warranted or not, we'll find out. But that just has gotten to the point it's just too far. So let's just make a change, and voters agreed.
You didn't vote for Donald Trump, but now that he's the president, he says in his first 100 days, tax reform, health care reform, and he's also going to work on immigration.
Yeah.
If he's able to do any good in those three, what are you going to make of a presidency of Donald Trump?
If the first 100 days, if he can do those 3 things, he's on the right track. And because presidents legislatively don't accomplish a lot during their 4 or 8 years in office. It's just because of the way Congress works. But if he brings that businessman work ethic to it, he can really change the way things are done. Immigration, the easy thing to do is get rid of the criminal aliens here. I think just about everybody in America
The criminal aliens.
So you do that, that's a huge accomplishment right away.
Not rounding up 20 million people, the criminals.
The ones who are already on the record, who are already been caught, get them out of here. Nobody's going to be mad about that. Then if you can get tax reform and make me pay less taxes, healthcare reform, Obamacare, I'm sure you've talked about the numbers on your TV show here, is that, if it's more than the price of a mortgage, average-wide across the state, if you can reform that.
And mandatory.
In 100 days or even the first year.
Yep.
You're betting, 700.
Yep. All right, he's one of the things that makes the machine of our morning show work. I wanted you to meet him. He's got great insights. You can follow him on Twitter and follow him on Instagram. We're going to have this up here for you. But Rob Hunter, I'm really glad that people got to meet you on the TV show.
My pleasure, man.
Thanks,
That's cool.
man. We'll be back. Welcome back. Yesterday we honored our veterans on Veterans Day and their service to our country. Today we honor the newest military members with what we call From Arizona for America. It's our way to congratulate and thank the fine Arizona men and women who have recently graduated from boot camp and are now serving in our country's military. So please join me in honoring U.S. Army Private David Castro from Desert Edge High School in Goodyear, Airman First Class William Hurst from Embry-Riddle Aeronautics University in Prescott, Arizona, U.S. Army Private James Farmer from Compadre High School in Tempe. For a list of more of our friends and neighbors that are from Arizona for America, go to the Mike Broomhead page at aztv.com. We'll be back in a moment with Broomhead's Best and hashtag this. Don't go away. Time for my favorite part of the show. We call it Broomhead's Best. This week, it's the VMLC Heroes Patriotic Luncheon. That's the Veterans Medical Leadership Council. It's medical and mental health care for veterans. Their website is ArizonaVMLC.org. The luncheon is coming up next week. I'm the MC for this event. They do great work. It's at the Biltmore. If you're interested, come and join us. It's one way for you to contribute to this great veterans cause. Now we have something we call #this. This one made my skin absolutely crawl. It's #snake on a plane. Aeromexico Flight 231. The venomous green viper falls out of the overhead bin. No one knew how this thing got on the plane. All of a sudden, here it is hanging from the overhead bin. It drops on the floor. They cover it with a towel, make an emergency landing in Mexico City. I would run to the lavatory and drag a person with a disability out to lock myself in if I saw that snake. It is one of the most harrowing videos I've ever seen. We'll be back to close it out. Don't go away. And next week on the show, our friends from St. Vincent de Paul will be with us. Shannon Clancy joins us. I love St. Vincent de Paul. Do you know that the biggest commercial kitchen in the state of Arizona is at St. Vincent de Paul, feeding thousands of families in need every day? Great donation place, homeless ministry, medical, dental. They give haircuts and showers and new clothes, and nothing goes to waste, which is why I love them so much. I can't wait for you to hear from Shannon because they have a big fundraiser coming up soon. It's our way to give back to an organization that does so many great things in our community. And I also, before we get out of here, want to thank my good friend Rob Hunter. I told you we're going to love the interview. Great insight. He's a smart guy, a lot of fun to watch, and, you know, knows a lot about beer, so what's wrong with that? Next week, we can't wait to talk to Shannon. I want to thank you again for joining me this week. I'm glad this election is over. Let's take the next step forward with President Trump. Have a great week, everyone. God bless.
Get more of Mike Broomhead on Facebook, Twitter, and, of course, weekday mornings from 6 to 10 on News Talk 550 KFYI.